very fortunate to have author Suzanne with us to talk about Hunger Games and the new book, Catching Fire. And I know we all have a lot of questions. I'm just going to kick it off real quick and just ask, where did this story come from? Because it's like nothing I've ever read for young adult.
The actual moment when I got the idea for the Hunger Games, I was lying in bed late at night one night, and I was channel surfing. And I found myself going in between reality television programs and footage of the Iraq War. And these images sort of began to meld together in my mind in a very unsettling way. And that's when it sort of struck me, this idea for the games. And I thought, okay, if you take those and you combine them, what do you get? And the elements of it being life and death and competition, but then the elements of it also from the reality television program being a public entertainment, well, those are all the elements of a gladiator game. And when I was a child, I was obsessed with those old biblical gladiator movies, or even the non-biblical ones, but those big epic films like Spartacus and Demetrius and the Gladiators. And I loved the whole concept of working with that. And I was thinking, okay, what circumstance could possibly get them to the place that they would have to enter this awful Hunger Games? And that's when I went back to another of my childhood loves, which is the myth of Theseus. I was fanatical about Greek mythology when I was, some of you are nodding. I can tell you were also fanatical, and you have well-worn copies of like D'Aulaire's myths and things at home. And so I thought, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the Theseus setup. And if you know the Hunger Games, you know that's exactly the setup. The Hunger Games are punishment for a war that happened 74 years ago during the Dark Days, where these 12 districts, or 13 at the time, rebelled against this central power called the capital, and they lost, and the Hunger Games were part of the surrender terms. And so every year, 2 kids, 1 girl and 1 boy, between the ages of 12 and 18, are chosen by lottery, which is how they choose it in the Theseus myth, to go, and they're called tributes, and Athens sending the children was meant to be a tribute to Crete. And they must compete in this gladiator fight to the death. And it's an annual reminder of who is in charge and who has the power. And what will happen if you do not do this is we will not only take your 2 children, we'll come and kill everybody.
One of the questions that I was begged to ask at this from friends is, do you plan, or would you publish a map of the districts? People want to see the layout of the land and where is that.
We can kind of guess.
Yeah.
They told you about 12 being in Appalachia and the capital being in the Rockies.
Yes.
And like, you know,
but those are both large stretches, you know, of area. I didn't want to be too specific. There are certain things that you will know as you read, like you will pick up that District 4 must be on a coast because they're a fishing district. You know, Katniss is somewhere in the coal belt of Appalachia. I didn't want to be too specific for the reader. Because for one reason, it puts you ahead of Katniss. I don't know that she has a very clear picture of the geography of the, you know, remains of North America. And that actually is important at one point in book 3, that she hasn't realized something before. Maybe when all is said and done, but I'd almost rather that the reader read it and they're trying to figure it out as it goes along, because there's a lot of that information she doesn't have either, and I want you to be with her.
And I would like to hear from everybody here. What would you do as a competitor in the games? Would you have run to the